we've got agendas and minutes to look at real quick. And we've got a quorum if everybody's seated, so let's start looking at those.
You need to give me some revisions in email and incorporate those.
Okay, thank you. Other than those, which we see in here anyway, so we don't know what was changed. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes, substantive changes to the minutes that they would like to propose at this time? I don't want to call for it until I think everybody's got insurance. Not yet. Okay. Does anybody have any substantive changes at this point to the minutes from last month? No? All right. I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written. All in favor of adopting the minutes as written, show of hands and an eye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. That was close. Now for the agenda. Does anybody have any proposed changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda? Show of hands and aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Amy, you vote? Did you vote?
Sorry.
Aye on the agenda. All right. And no abstentions. Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the, is it October? The October meeting of the Human Rights Commission. First thing we're going to do is just go around the room, introduce ourselves, and we'll start with Alan.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Lazo, I'm a Human Rights Commissioner.
Kyle Bussey, Commissioner.
Good Commissioner. Sam Sachs, Commissioner.
Amy Samara, Commissioner. Maya Arreola, Commissioner.
Jeff Sylvie, Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Ashley Horn, Commissioner.
Sonji Young, Commissioner.
Mike, do you want to start us off in the gallery?
Mike Tabor, filming with independent media, putting it on joeanybody.com.
Thank you. Mr. James.
Dante James with the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Thank you.
Constantine Severe with the Independent Police Review Division.
Lavon Heister with the Portland Commission on Disability. Anita Van Dalbert with the Independent Police Review.
Thank you.
Danielle Desmond with the Housing Bureau.
I didn't. Welcome, everybody. The first thing we want to do today is invite our esteemed director to come to the table and tell us what's what. Hello, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Late afternoon, whichever it might be. I just thought I'd give a quick 2-second kind of update on some things that may be of interest to the commission and answer any questions you may have. One, first, just congratulations to the new commissioners. That's the first time I've seen them here. I guess I missed the last meeting, so congratulations. I've heard some really wonderful things about both of you already, and Sam and I already know you, so pleasure to have you on the commission. Specifically, just something of interest regarding the police bureau. I had several months ago gone out to the police training center and observed their scenario-based trainings. There were 4 trainings. 2 were shootings, one was a taser, and one dealt with someone who clearly had a mental health issue. And the scenarios were how the officers were supposed to deal, protocol procedures through that process, strategies, and other things. Long story short, 3 of those trainings were graded, one was not. The one dealing with the mental health issue was not graded. My question was, why would you not grade something most police officers are going to have to do almost every day as opposed to something most will never do, which is shoot someone? And so I came back a week later and I got a commitment from the captain of the training facility that the next wave of officers going through the in-services, all those scenarios would be graded. And then just last week, they began the process of putting that together, and they invited me back out to the training facility and met with Captain Harmon, who runs the facility, two of the training officers, and Emily Covelli, who's their analyst, who really did an excellent job of putting together a grading process by which the one scenario would be graded. So I thought that they had really done a very thoughtful job of that, and I appreciate them obviously taking my concerns and questions into consideration. What I'll say is overall, I thought that all of the scenario-based trainings were very well done. In another life, I was a cop in the military, so I have some idea of what makes sense, and so I could ask some questions. And so I thought the scenarios were very well done. I thought the training facilitators did an excellent job in trying to ensure that what were essentially new messages to the police officers was really being put forth, such as just because you can use your taser doesn't mean you should, and what are the thought process steps that you can be able to go through to evaluate whether I can do this or should do this or not. Secondly, with the mental health piece, the training goal was to teach an understanding that disengagement is also a legitimate now response. And just because you're there doesn't mean you have to cuff them and take them out. So disengagement is the legitimate response. And they really did an excellent job of putting that there and ensuring that the police officers got it. I will tell you honestly, there were a couple that did not. And so then my questions were, what's the next step in terms of remedial processes? They didn't have a good answer. And so that's the next step of my conversation. But they are seriously thinking about it. How do they then address someone who doesn't come up to those minimum expectations of understanding the expectation of the scenario? So I think they are making some very good steps in regard to the training processes.
How is the office getting that information? I mean, what you just shared with us, I think a really large portion of our community would love to hear that. That our director is doing that work and is bringing up those questions, and that the police are actually listening. I'm wondering how we can get that message to that community in an effective way, because I think a lot of people think that we aren't or that this office, or I wouldn't say you, but any of us really are asking these questions or are thinking about these things even. And I think it would be great to have a conversation about how we get that information out. And that may be somewhere where we can help. That may be a function that we consider. But is that something that's being done already? And I guess, what efforts are being made in that regard?
I appreciate the question. The answer is, Jeff has asked, and I've essentially said, just wait a minute, because I'd like to move it further down the road a little bit to see what is completely instituted and what the final results are of the scenarios, and they're not done, and we're not done with the evaluation completeness of that. So I just said wait, and the second half is just as much as I would like people to be aware of that, how do I do that? For me, it's not a story. I mean, okay, I'm doing this, and the story would be, from the police perspective, maybe we're being called out because we weren't doing good enough, as opposed to see what we're doing. And so I balance that, and I don't have a good answer for that, and I'm willing to listen to how you'd like to see that disseminated. That works for me, but again, I don't write a press release for every time I go do something.
Sure. It just seems like, I mean, the perception that those questions are even being raised by this office could be an important, just from a perception standpoint, an important piece of information for our community to have.
I don't disagree.
Because even if there is no tangible result that our community is going to be able to point to and say, hey, look how much better so bogged down in numbers and statistics, it would be great for people to know that these are questions that are being asked. So, I don't know the answer, I'm just asking.
Scotty and I talked about it, and we'll, you know, like you said, the feeling is when it gets a little more complete, you know, we'll definitely get that.
Also, in regard to the good training that the CPRC is providing for the command staff, and that they're considering rolling out now for the sergeants. My conversation to the command staff now is, you had the training, so what? And what are you doing, or what can you show that has been done, changed, evaluated, et cetera, because of the training you received before you send it off to the sergeants? And I haven't really gotten a good answer. I was speaking with a commander, and I said, how is this reinforced, the information that you received, how is this reinforced, for example, at roll call? So that before your officers are going out on the street to have these interactions, how are you reinforcing what you learned and what you heard in the training? And the response was, well, we just don't really want to do that because it'll make the officers think that we're saying they're not doing a good job. I said, no, that doesn't, no. And so how do we reinforce, so I don't have a good answer. And I'm still waiting on a better answer. And so those are some of the conversations that I'm having. How do we reinforce what's being presented and promoted and gone through the CPRC's training, and that so that it just doesn't stay up in an ivory tower, but filters through the Bureau in a way that also then filters to the community. So I don't have an answer.
I wonder if it should be focused through the Bureau or through us, because I think that if they know, then you're able to keep the Bureau accountable. If the community is covered, we're telling people about it. I mean, it's not gonna, I see why we want to wait so that they can have like a good image and know that we're doing things and we're solving things, but if they know earlier, would that hurt or would it help?
Would it hurt if they know specifically what?
What's going on, I came a little bit late, so I might be confused, but there's been work going on, and Kyle asked the question of should we be telling?
Yeah, sure. Oh, I don't think it would hurt at all if the community is aware that these questions are being asked and they're being responded to by the police bureau. I think it's a positive statement on behalf of the police bureau that they are listening, that they are evaluating their own processes, et cetera. So I don't think it's a negative at all if the community is aware of that. I think though that there's also a need that it be promoted and filtered from the top down, because that's how the Bureau works. And so I don't know how much the knowledge by the community is going to change the actions of the police officers that they interact with. Just because I know you are supposed to do this and I tell you you're supposed to do it, might not get me anywhere. So I'm not saying no at all. I guess I'm saying maybe it definitely needs to come from both sides and work to the middle. So yeah.
So I'm getting back in our evaluation process. So what do you know about the end point of that training? Is there a pass-fail, and does that, and what happens if somebody fails, and does that process go into their evaluation process?
Yeah, and those are the questions I was asking. There is for the first three that were graded, it was clearly a pass-fail, because if I don't evaluate the shooting situation correctly and a civilian gets shot, I didn't pass. So some of those are very easy to grade. Some of the difficult part with the community, with the mental health issue was, how do I evaluate this individual in terms of, is he a threat to himself, is he a threat to somebody else? Do I respond now? Can I disengage? Can I start and then disengage again? So some of those are not as easily quantifiable, and so that was the process by which they were trying to figure So they did have lots of different criteria, and different categories to look at those kinds of things.
And that's helpful, and what I was referring to with evaluation was the overall officer evaluation, so there were the employee evaluations that they do, does that take part, does that training process take part in that for them? Do you know?
In terms of, like, their own performance evaluations, from my understanding, you can answer this better than I, police don't get performance evaluations.
No.
Not involved.
They don't get it.
So what are the consequences of not passing the training?
Yes.
It might be like when you're qualifying for firearm. Each year you have to qualify with your firearm. If you can't pass it the first 3 times you go through till you pass it. So you qualify. I don't know if that's the case here, but it could be.
They bring you
something
back,
similar to
send you through a different kind of scenario that's very simple. So the question is, from the police perspective, the question is, okay, if they don't pass the first time, we run them through again, they don't meet basic criteria that we are expecting the second time, what do we do? Do we leave them on the street? Because now we're liable because we know that they failed this, or do we pull them off? It becomes a big, in their minds, legal / political / union kind of issue that they don't have the answer for yet. So that's the conversation that they are more specific about.
So that's where they're at, like, so if someone fails, they don't know what to do at that point? Or they're not
I don't
sure?
think they've gotten to the point where somebody has not passed twice. When they bring them back for a remedial session, I don't know that they've gotten to the point where somebody has passed. At least the communities, the other, shootings and the taser pieces, that's much more specific. Communities. And then I asked, can we layer the community scenario so that, because I said, where's the scenario where the officer walks in and everybody's speaking in sign language, which sometimes is a very aggressive, language, and, 2 months ago, the city of Portland paid $60,000 because of a police officer's decision not to arrest, and somebody got their butt kicked, and all those kinds of things. Or can we layer it that they walk in and the person has a mental health issue, but they don't speak English? What do you do? And how so how can we layer these so we can get more than one specific scenario? And so it gave them some pause to think about how to do this differently and or more broadly to encompass different conversations.
Well, thanks very much for that. Certainly something that we need to keep an eye on, and thanks for doing that work. Okay. All right. Thank you. Amy, that seems like sort of a piece of HRC-related work that is something that you've really thought a lot about, trying to do police accountability type work outside the realm of CPRC. And it seems like that type of thing might be following up with Dr. on that, or just looking at those kinds of things might be a good, that's a good, I guess, topic to put into your wheelhouse there.
Specifically the training.
Yeah.
And the questions like that, absolutely.
Yeah, so, cool, all right. Well, thank you, Dante. We have, and I think that was a really good segue into our next guest, who is Constantine Severe, who's the Director of Independent Police Review. So, Mr. Severe, if you want to come on up. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Is this your first visit to the Human Rights Commission?
It is. I've been to a few CPRC meetings, but even that's been a few years. I brought some copies of some code changes IPR is proposing, but I don't think I brought enough record.
That's all right, we can share.
So my name is Constantine Severe. I am the director of the Independent Police Review Division. With me today is my assistant director, Anika Bent-Albert. Very recently, the New York City Department of Corrections. So decided to leave that wonderful place behind and come to Portland. So IPR is part of the City Auditor's Office. We're a division of the City Auditor's Office. We were created in 2001. Our mission is to review, monitor, and investigate the Portland Police Bureau when there are incidents of alleged officer misconduct, and also to take accommodations about Portland police officers if they do actions that the community feels are great. And our agency has transitioned over time since 2001. Originally, because we were part of the auditor's office, we were more viewed as an agency that would look at police misconduct investigations done by the Portland Police Bureau and then just kind of review them and give them the community feedback. And just with Portland, folks felt that wasn't really an appropriate paradigm for police oversight. They wanted us to be more actively engaged. So as time has gone along, we've become much more involved in doing investigations, reviewing investigations. We also have an advisory board called the Citizen Review Committee, and they're actually meeting today at 5:30 in City Hall. So I will be leaving around 5:30 to confirm that. And one of their main functions is to gather community concerns and issues, and also to hear appeals of cases that have been fully adjudicated, and if the person that's filed the complaint, the community member or the police officer, is not satisfied with the way the complaint is handled, then they can file an appeal with the CRC, and they hear on average about 5 or 6 complaints a year. With IPR, we have, and one of the things I want to have a conversation with you guys as opposed to just talking at you. So if you guys have any questions, feel free just to stop me wherever. IPR has the authority to approve every investigation that the Portland Police Bureau does, and so we have to approve every investigation, and then the way it works at the Portland Police Bureau is that the officer's commander does what's called a finding, and we have to approve the finding as well, which is basically kind of a summation of the investigation and whether his or her actions were inside or outside of policy. The way it works in Portland, generally with all bureaus, the bureau commissioner in charge is in charge of that bureau. So all disciplinary decisions in Portland finally rest with the police commissioner, who is Charlie Hills in this case, usually the mayor, but as some of you might remember, Dan Saltzman was police commissioner for a period of time a few years ago. And going back to the early 80s, Commissioner Charles Jordan was police commissioner for a while when he was a member of the city council. One of the things that IPR is tasked with is just monitoring the police bureau and making adjustments to our oversight system. And that's one of my goals with the code changes that we're doing right now. This is something that we're kind of working on even before the Department of Justice, or thinking about before the Department of Justice settlement agreement came down, but it's one of those things. I think there were a lot of folks in the community who felt there were issues with police accountability and police oversight that needed to be addressed, and I think the Department of Justice settlement agreement just underlines some of those concerns. One of the biggest problems with our system is that there's not a lot of transparency. Our system is an employment investigation system primarily. So with anything involving employment and the city being a governmental actor, so there's constitutional requirements of the way the city has to act. So you have to protect people's process rights, their constitutional process rights, their Oregon statutory rights, and then all collective bargaining agreements. So in the attempt to make sure that we follow all the different processes, I think over time we built a structure that community members can't really fully engage in. And one of the things, just being a member of living in the city of Portland, is where we need to have community engagement and fully engaged citizenry to affect change, it's been very difficult for folks in the community who felt that they haven't been able to fully involve themselves in police oversight. So one of my hopes is that that through these code changes and additional code changes as we go along, that we will be able to have much more transparency in our system. At the same time, maintaining those constitutional protections. Are there any questions so far? This is an area I'll just keep on talking. Anybody stop?
Did you?
Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, you mentioned that you have the responsibility to approve every investigation and finding. And I'm just wondering, so is that, you're approving of the process? Well, or you're approving of the investigation after it's complete and the finding after it's complete, not the initial decision to conduct an investigation?
Well,
Or is it both?
so the way, and because there's so many different ways these cases can happen, I'll just talk about like just the most general case pattern. So IPR has the authority to take community complaints. We make an initial decision on whether that case should be referred to the police bureau for investigation. The way the city code works right now, IPR has the ability to do an independent investigation, but just the way the code is written, there's the default assumption that the police bureau would be doing the majority of investigations through their internal affairs. IPR, as it stands right now, does not have the authority to directly talk to officers. For us to talk to a police officer, we have to have, and the way it's written in the city code is IPR has to direct the question through an internal affairs investigator, and then the internal affairs investigator proceeds to give the question to the Port Police Bureau member.
And can they just say no?
No,
Okay.
no, they have, because, and the reason why it goes through that, it's very convoluted, and it kind of goes back to the sausage making inside baseball of when IPR was created in 2001. I think the fear in 2001 when IPR was created that because there's going to be this new citizen body, because before that there's an organization called PIAC, which was the Portland Police Internal Auditing Committee, which basically looked at closed cases, and they said what, and all they would do is make a decision whether the case was handled appropriately or not. And it basically ended up being like a subcommittee of council, but originally council acted as PIAC, and then eventually council got some interested community members to review the case. When IPR was created, I think there was a lot of fear that we would totally change the disciplinary system and make IPR or the CRC the final say in discipline. And I think some of that fear seeped its way into our portion of the city code. So we have this convoluted process right now. And it's kind of interesting, this process that we created in 2001, when you look at the DOJ's findings letter when they started their investigation, and you look at their settlement agreement the city has reached with DOJ, I mean, we get knocked off a couple of points because of that. You know, the DOJ calls our system Byzantine and self-defeating, and I mean, it really is. So I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, even though it kind of hurts to hear have an outside entity knock your system, but when they're speaking truth, it's the truth. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have one part of the city having to go through another part of the city to ask an employee a question, because council has the charter right to delegate to different parts of the city to investigate members of the city for possible misconduct. That's why BHR, Bureau of Human Resources, can do investigations of anybody in the city. They're also known as they compel people, and they have to answer the question, and they have to answer it honestly. So that's basically the same thing that we would be asking council to kind of clean up in our language, is use that charter right. So it wouldn't be anything unprecedented or unheralded in the city government.
It seems like it would enhance your independent role if you didn't have to do that, because that's the reason you're asking for that change?
And yes, indeed, putting the independent in the independent police review.
What's the process for this code? Is this, so this is, I mean, this is just a sheet of paper from your office, but is this in council or towards council?
It is towards council. It is on that road. You know, it's one of those things where we've been working on this like drafting code language and all that for a good part of 3-4 months. Council will have the first hearing on this on October 23rd. I anticipate there will be a second hearing and maybe even a third because of just the amount of public interest that these things usually have. We had code changes in 2010, and council had about 3 hearings on that. And during those code changes, IPR got the ability to have subpoena power and got the ability to fully monitor the police. And we were able to interpret that portion of the new code to allow us the ability to go to all officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, to monitor the investigation from the beginning, to just see what was occurring. We go to the chief's briefing after every officer-involved shooting. We were part of the investigation. We get to sit in on the interviews, ask questions if we need to, and as normal, we have to approve the investigation if we feel the investigation was thorough, non-biased, ask all the right questions, and if we don't agree with that investigation, we can send it back. And then we have to approve the officer's, commander's findings. And then if the case goes to the police review board, which is the disciplinary board set up in the police bureau for cases facing a day or more of suspension or all officer-involved shootings and custody deaths, IPR is a voting member, and that's something that happened in 2010 as well. There are 2 civilian members of this police review board and 3 police bureau members. There's a peer officer member, there's the officer's commander, and then the officer's assistant chief. So Assistant Chief O'Day, like a street officer, since he's in charge of operations, he'd be the assistant chief that would go to those police review boards.
So is that the body then that would settle if you had a disagreement about either a recommendation or a finding? So let's say you disagree with one of the reviews or the findings. If does PRB then?
Exactly. That is
So then you both go to PRB and they decide?
PRB would, and you know, that's an interesting kind of like crux, because PRB would make that decision, but within our system, the chief of police, police commissioner, they're the final say. So everything's like recommended. And one of the things that I'm wanting to make sure that's clear to folks who look at the public reports that were created after our code changes in 2010 is that the public reports reflect, one, that there's like it's kind of lined out exactly what's supposed to be in the public report, and then additionally, that what comes out of the PRB is listed in the public report, and also what is the chief's proposed findings, and what is actually the final discipline imposed on that officer. Because sometimes that can change, and right now, when the public reports come out, you just have what the police review board recommended, and that can be different. And I don't think anybody is trying to hide the ball or anything like that, but I think it creates like kind of a cynicism out there when members of the public look at a public report produced by the city of Portland, and then lo and behold, you know, a few weeks later when Maxine Bernstein or some enterprising reporter like puts it all together, it's like, oh, actually, what the police review board recommended, that's something very different than what the chief actually ended up doing, and there could be a really good reason for that. You know, the chief has a mitigation hearing that happens in between the police review board and when he issues his final discipline. So, like, you know, you can find out mitigating factors, which is appropriate in disciplinary cases. Another thing, if the chief disagrees with the police review board, I would, in the code changes, there's a recommendation that the chief have that written in policies, or sorry, written in some document. You would think that is something that's not very controversial, but that has ended up being a little bit more controversial than I thought it would be. But again, that is in any other realm, that's common sense. Because folks say the police review board is very important. I think it's very important. I think it's been one of the best innovations in the Portland Police Bureau in the last 10 years, and I think we need to treat them as seriously as we think they are.
So I just want to let you know we only have about 5 more minutes.
Oh, yes.
We're running a little bit behind.
Okay.
But I'd like to know, what you'd like us to take away as a commission, and also if you have any thoughts about how we might interface in the future. I think having you come and visit us, on a semi-regular basis would be great to find out what emerging issues there are with your organization. But
Well, I would, I guess the takeaway would be one that while IPR is here, we're going to be a partner with different agencies. I think within the city, a lot of times people get stuck in their own different compartments and think they have to do everything. CPRC in particular has done a lot of really good work in the police-related worlds, and I wanted the CRC and CPRC to kind of get together and like just collaborate on some things. There was a period of time when the CRC was doing, looking at the Bureau's use of force issues. CPRC was working at it at the very exact same time. And I was like, well, if we could have saved both entities a lot of time if, and effort and come up with better products on both sides if we just, kind of cross-trained a little bit. And it'd be great if, occasionally, you folks or folks who are on CPRC would go to a CRC meeting. Reach out to myself and other staff members. Nika, myself, there's an assistant program manager, Rachel Mortimer, who love to, talk to any of you folks. And our outreach coordinator, Irene Konev, is just phenomenal. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know her already. But, if you have any questions about police oversight type things, feel free to use us as a resource because we're here for the city. Every person at our staff really believes in the city, and it's all about making the city better. And the one thing that it's my takeaway, and it's kind of this, it's not really an epiphany, but as a result of the city Department of Justice settlement agreement, it says Portland's administrative investigation system has to do its work much quicker and has to do it much better. And for the longest time, because of the silos, everybody's, well, it's IPR's part, IA's part. It's like, the DOJ, it doesn't really matter. The DOJ sued the city of Portland. It's the city of Portland. And for the longest time, folks have treated the Portland Police Bureau like there's some sort of spin-off industry in the city of Portland where it's like, well, the police bureau did something again. It's like people who work for this, it's like, no, it's all of us. People who live in the city have a stake in the successful police bureau. I'm a former criminal defense attorney. I believe police officers, there are times when they have to arrest people or they have to use force, but we want them to do it in a manner that's constitutional and within the ethics and the values of our community. And the only way we're able to do that as a community and hold them accountable and hold the city accountable for not doing what it's supposed to do is if the community members are engaged and if they have the knowledge. And I'm trying to do my part to make sure that the community has at least the knowledge base because I don't think we've done a good job of that historically in the city. So you folks, talking to you folks, and you folks talking back to me and the CRC hopefully will help in doing that. So that would be basically using my last 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
There was a case recently where you guys recommended the termination of an officer and you're going to agree with it, or the chief didn't agree with it?
We can't talk about specifics in particular, but that has happened. The thing is, with our system, the chief is the final say. Chief and the police commissioner, they're the final say.
So can you tell me, without talking specific cases, in the existence of the office, how many times have you guys recommended termination? And, I guess how many terminations have taken place, or how many have been recommended and not taken place? Because it seems like it's very difficult to terminate an officer.
I think, truth be told, I think where we've made recommendations of termination of the police bureau, I think that's relatively, I only talk in the last year because I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of all the different iterations. But I can think of 2 occasions in the last year where either, particularly during the police review board stage, or in subsequent press, IPR recommended, it came out that IPR recommended termination, and the police bureau made a different decision. So that's one. The other part of it is that it is very difficult to terminate a police officer because of all of the different procedures you have to go through. That said, I think sometimes we've lost those terminations. So the city says, okay, this officer needs to be terminated. The officer files a grievance. and it goes in front of the arbitrator. And so a lot of times we've lost because the city hasn't followed its own policies. So for us to be able to hold people accountable, we have to be accountable to ourselves. We have to have a policy that's clear, that somebody from the outside, that's like not city, not union, says, okay, this is what your policy is, this is what you trained your employee to. And, okay, it's documented, you trained your employee to this, and okay, fine, you guys decide to fire him, okay, let him go. And unfortunately, the city hasn't done a great job of doing that historically. When you look at the arbitration games and all those in the public record, it's embarrassing, actually, frankly. Just the level of incompetence just throughout the city that allows some of these laws that should have been implemented to have to adopt that because the city didn't do a good job. The city didn't prove this case.
So, do I have enough time for another one?
I have one.
We can go briefly to Ashley. We have someone else we need.
Yeah, I don't want
Ashley, go ahead.
It has to do with your request for our action or how we can partner, and you gave us some really good takeaways about how we can collaborate with CPRC. I'm just curious with the 2013 proposed police accountability reforms that you passed out. I haven't been tracking this, and I apologize if I'm way off here.
No.
But is there anything that you might be looking to the Human Rights Commission to do to endorse support or consider what you're working on, or?
I didn't want to presume the Human Rights Commission's endorsement or try to seek that because I wanted to come here as just a partner, either like right now or just in the future. But if you guys take a look at this, a lot of this information is on our website. Look at the proposals. In probably the next week or so, I'm going to be releasing the code language that we've been working on. So if I'll send it to Mr. Sully, and you can send it to the group. And if you guys feel this is something that you feel strongly about or you want to support, I would welcome that.
And in the process of us reviewing that and conferring likely with the community about that, and we want to make suggestions to that, is there space for that at this point, or is it too late in the game?
No. So these are my code provisions, what I've been working on. If there are ideas out there, I can't say IPR has a monopoly on police accountability in Portland. So the code changes that I'm proposing, they're not the end of proposed code changes. We're going to have to go to council probably in 2014 with some additional changes that are in the DOJ agreement, but because the DOJ agreement is not implemented yet, we're going to wait on some of those, particularly that affect the CRC. So there's the 2014 opportunity. But, I'm quite open to hearing any, particularly the feedback from you guys, because you guys have a pretty strong skill set on a lot of these related issues. So, I'm definitely not a gatekeeper. So, I'm bringing this to council, and my hope, particularly with police accountability in 2010, it ended up being a little bit of a struggle to get those passed. And what I'm trying to do is have something that 5 members of council will vote in front of it for. I'm not really interested in like a 3-2 really divisive type issue. There's some issues that I wish I could have put in here, but I don't, at least at this point, I don't think those are unanimous. Because I think for police accountability, just because of the difficult space it's in, it's something that really needs to be a strong unanimous voice.
Okay.
Thank you for.
And I'm sure we'll have lots more questions for you, and we'll get in touch.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here.
Irene is amazing.
Yes, she is. Okay, we're running just a little bit behind. Danielle, thank you very much for your patience. And Danielle Ledesma is the manager of the Portland Housing Bureau's Equity Policy and Communications Department. Is it a department?
Sure.
You've just been promoted.
Yeah.
The president.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My goal is to not send your little daughter out of the room screaming with boredom, so let me know. Let me know. She'll be my cue when I'm talking too much. So I'm really excited to be here because in our sort of housing policy world, we've been working on trying to knit together some exciting things, in my perspective, around how we create a framework for the way that we make investments in housing. So as many of you may know, the Housing Bureau is the only bureau in the city that's really charged with focusing on low-income people. So our mission is to try to serve the housing needs of folks who aren't served by the market. And so when you think about the housing market and the many housing markets, there's a lot of work that could be done. And so where we focus our work primarily is in 4 investment areas. So we work on ending people's homelessness and trying to prevent people's homelessness. We try to create or preserve affordable rental housing. We try to create homeowners or to preserve homeowners, particularly for communities of color. And then we attempt to knit together a safety net for folks who may be at risk of being homeless or losing their housing. So it's with that framework that we've started to think about who we serve. And so with a good leadership from the Office of Equity and Human Rights, like the rest of the city, we've been really focused in on sort of honing in who we want to serve. And we know that people of color are disproportionately impacted by poverty, have some of the highest needs and some of the hugest disparities. And so we've been working really hard on implementing our equity agenda to ensure that people of color are getting served through our programs. Not only that they're getting served and they're able to walk through the doors of our programs, but that they're succeeding. They're having housing retention and housing success at the same rate as other folks who are served by our programs. So we've been good on sort of thinking about like the who. And so what we now know is that where people live and that really matters. Place really matters. And so there's been a little bit of a bifurcation in housing policy over time where we've said, well, as long as we focus on the lowest income folks, it doesn't matter where they live because we're focused on the people who are the lowest income, the people who are most in need. And so we've really been challenged by, folks on this committee, folks in the media, folks in public, to sort of think about how where one grows up, where one lives, has an impact on their life outcomes, which we are obviously concerned with at PHB. So what we wanted to do is to think about a project that could answer a lot of questions. So the questions of this project that we wanted to answer were, how can we better deploy our resources in a way that does 2 things? On the one hand, gets people that we want to serve greater access to those places that are rich in opportunity and rich in amenities. And at the same time, how do we use our resources and invest our resources in a way that helps preserve affordability and maintains communities in places that are rapidly changing, where you see a lot of gentrification and displacement as a result of that gentrification. So that was one question that we wanted to answer. Another question we wanted to think about was how do we continue to promote the good work that we're doing around equity, and in particular fair housing, to think about what can we do to not only think about our investments, but other investments in health, in childcare, in education, in transportation, to think about how we can participate and contribute to communities of opportunity for people of color, for people in protected classes. And the Obama administration has really encouraged housing folks and communities receiving federal housing resources to think about not only what are we doing to end discrimination in housing, but what are we doing proactively to, and the term is, to affirmatively further fair housing. And so we wanted this project to be able to speak to that. What can we do in terms of reviewing the way that we allocate funding, the way that we make investments, the way that we think about our work so that we can promote these communities of opportunity for folks who haven't had those opportunities. So we are at the City of Portland, and so the first thing that we did when embarking on this project is that we formed a committee. So we formed a technical advisory committee, and we wanted to I'm a housing nerd, I'm like a self-avowed housing nerd, and we wanted to sort of think outside of ourselves. We wanted to get the transportation nerds at the table, we wanted the education nerds and the planning nerds, we wanted everyone who had something to offer when we think about these communities of opportunity to be at the table. So we got a really diverse, experienced, super smart group around the table to help us think through our process. The other thing that we wanted to do is that we wanted to engage community around some of the things that our staff were thinking about, our Portland Housing Advisory were thinking about, and also this new technical advisory committee. So we engaged with ONI's Diverse Civic Leaders Network. So we worked with the Latino Network, with IRCO, with Urban League, with Native American Youth and Family Center, and oh man, I just forgot it. Huh?
CIO.
CIO, the Center for Intercultural Organizing. Thank you. Dave and Liam are in the back. They worked on this project. So we worked with them to kind of like test some of our assumptions, to really sort of make sure that we had a strong community voice and community engagement in this process. So with that, we went and sought out pieces of information. And so I think that you have maybe one of the smallest packets you've ever received from someone who's presenting to you. Lots of copies. I'm a math nerd as well. So what I thought we could do is start with the back of that packet and tell you a little bit about some of the assumptions that we have. So the third from the back. Well, we're not going to make this easy for you. So the third from the back. So we looked at, where have we made investments before? So what you have is a map of Portland, and that map and the next one beneath it shows where we've made investments in rental housing development. So rental housing development is where the majority of our funding goes to, simply because of the expense of building and developing housing. And so you'll see that we've made significant investments in places where there are urban renewal areas, because that's where we get the majority of our funding. It's from, tax increment financing. But the rest has been, kind of scattershot. And so I think what we want to sort of be able to tell is a better story about why we're making investments in some place. And when we partner with developers, we want them to be able to speak to how they're either creating affordability for folks in a place where there isn't a lot of access, or they're doing something to preserve affordability in places that are rapidly changing. And right now, this picture, you don't see really a compelling story one way or the other. It's been more opportunistic. The next page is a heat map, and what you'll see is that places where there are darker orange, hopefully the printer still works by then. So places where there are darker orange, that means where we've invested the most in home ownership services. So either in helping to build and develop home ownership units, or helping with down payment assistance or tax exemptions, tax abatements to help create new homeowners. And you'll see that we have invested significantly in Northeast Portland along the interstate corridor. Again, that's where we have a lot of funding through the TIP subside. But the rest is just kind of like blush tones. So again, it's sort of like what's the story when we think about the opportunities that homeownership brings, particularly because we're trying to create homeownership opportunities for people of color. Where you buy a home, where a family decides to buy a home, really impacts the rest of their life, their children's life. You think about their access to jobs, to transportation, to schools, to quality schools, services. So those two maps were a good bit of history for us. The next map, if you go back to this map right here, and then let's count together, okay? So this is the map right here. Everyone get on the dot map, and then go back. Let's do it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so everyone should have a map that looks like this, and it's like all red. So one of the things that we wanted to look at is our investments in regards to the rest of the housing market, okay? So what we wanted to do is to think about where can people afford either to rent on the open market or to buy a home. So we looked at folks who are making $10 an hour. So this is a family of 4 that maybe earns $20,000 a year. And if you look at this map, what this says is that there is nowhere in the city of Portland without some type of subsidy or affordable housing that someone on the open market can buy or even rent a place to live. So I'll let that sink in. I see a lot of heads nodding. So let's turn the page to the next map. So this is for a family of 4 that's making 60% of the median family income. So this is a family of 4 that's making roughly double of what the last family is making, so about $40,000 a year, close to $42,000 a year. This would be a family, earning maybe one wage earner earning $20 an hour full time. And so you'll see that there are places on the west side, downtown and in North Northwest where there's a family at this income cannot afford to rent nor buy. All the yellow areas are places where that family could afford to rent but not buy. And then there's patches in southeast Portland where folks could potentially, assuming that they have a down payment, for example, and no barriers with regards to like financing, that they could buy a home in those areas. And there's one tiny spot on the very top of I-205 where you could potentially buy a home as well, but otherwise it's just.
And I thought.
Yes. Say again? Oh, yeah, and then Hayden Island, right? Who knew? Hayden Island. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that. I always forget Hayden Island. So the next couple of maps, you continue to see how the map continues to change. So what this tells us is so again, our mission is to try to provide opportunities that the market isn't. So we want to be smart about the way that we make our investments and think about, is there a place where home ownership is available? Is that going to be something that's close to opportunity? So how do we think about opportunity? So our next set of maps, you can go back to the front of the packet. So knowing what we know about the market, knowing where we've made investments in the past, we engaged with a group of folks to sort of come up with these opportunity maps. Has anyone heard of John Powell from the Furwan Institute? He's done opportunity mapping for many communities throughout the country, including Clackamas County and Washington County. And basically what he said is that there are places in our communities where by virtue of just living there, you cannot help but ride the escalator up towards the good life, right? This is the place, when you think about where are those places in Portland where there's good schools, you can get on a bus or a streetcar or a MAX and you can take it to all the fun things, not a problem getting to your job, not a problem getting to the places. Now think of the opposite. Where might there be places in Portland where there aren't a lot of access to opportunity or amenities? And so what we asked people to do is to help us define that. And it was a pretty intense conversation because it meant for many people saying, my neighborhood doesn't have those amenities or opportunities, and that, we have a pretty segregated city in that way. So what we did is that we have these maps right here that are called heat maps again. So the darker purple is where there's a concentration of amenities or opportunity, and we've defined it in a couple of different ways. So this top map that you see here is combining all of our indicators. The next 5 maps sort of are things that we thought were really important. So the first one is employment indicators. So this is proximity to both high-wage jobs and low-wage jobs, weighted with more towards high-wage jobs. And if you'll see, the central city is going to be where most of those high-wage jobs are, with pockets in inner northeast, and then over in the Gateway neighborhood where there's, that's probably the healthcare out there, and then up in Airport Way as well. But there's a lot of yellow on there. The next map is education. Then we go into transportation, access to family wage jobs, and then healthy eating, active living. Is there any one of those maps that's maybe more interesting to the group, and we can talk a little more in depth about that? Yeah, so that would be the healthy eating, active living map. So that's proximity to parks, to natural spaces. It's also proximity to healthcare that accepts OHP, which probably isn't going to matter very much given the Affordable Care Act. But so we looked at opportunity. Oh yes, sir.
So this for employment indicator. So in this, you said the map reflects number of employment or high wages.
High wage jobs.
You don't have something about employment.
Say, what do you mean by where people? So we wanted to map not the people but the places, and so there was a lot of debate about that. Should we be mapping where there's a concentration of people who are employed? And people thought that it's better to sort of map where the jobs are because it's access to those amenities that we wanted to capture. But that's a good sort of delineation.
So this is high wage jobs.
High wage job. So it's 3 indicators. It's high wage jobs, low-wage jobs and then adult education resources, with high-wage jobs being weighted the most. And then if you have super spy glasses and you can see that little chart on the side, it tells you what the indicators are. We can get you a bigger copy of that.
I think there is a
Or
bigger
the glasses.
copy. There's a bigger copy right there.
Is this online? Can we
Yes,
find
it is online, yes.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us like where to find it?
Totally,
How,
yeah.
how does the employment indicators map relate to the access to family wage jobs indicators map?
Thank you. So what we did for this one is that folks are really interested when they saw the transportation map and the employment map. People were like, well, what matters is, you know, for a lot of families, it's like, where can you live where you don't have to spend, you know, a year on TriMet to get there to your job? And so what that map shows, so we developed this map to show, these are places where it takes less than 1 hour on public transportation to get to the high-wage job centers, including transfers. So we wanted to sort of, you know, do that. And that one, it's the shade, so we see the dark purple, but then there is some opportunity in sort of like the next level of, the next gradation of opportunity in the lighter purple, so.
Okay, so the jobs indicator map is taking the employment indicators, the high wage centers, and then saying, okay, from this point, what did you say?
Where could you live where it would take you less than an hour to get to the high wage centers on public transportation? And there was lots of debate, like, is it an hour, is it 45 minutes, so we had lots of good, robust discussion. So I think you may have already seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you have seen some of the work that Lisa Bates did from PSU. So this is the Bureau of Planning Sustainability as part of the update to the comprehensive plan to support the Portland plan. Developed a map that helps us look at a couple of factors that contribute to gentrification that could help us sort of anticipate where we might see the next wave of gentrification and displacement. So what she did is she looked at factors, changes in the market, where there has been significant either increases or decreases in home value, an influx in like the population of white folks moving into certain neighborhoods, people with higher incomes moving into neighborhoods, and people with higher levels of education moving into neighborhoods, and also a little bit about the home ownership rate as well. And then she sort of put that, you know, juxtaposed that with where there are vulnerable populations. And so vulnerable populations, she defined those as renters. So these would be folks who would be vulnerable to displacement. So renters, people with low income, communities of color, and people with lower educational attainment. And so based on those factors, what she did is sort of said, you know, these are the places in Portland where we could expect, where we're seeing some dynamism with regards to gentrification. So the blue areas, the darkest blue areas are sort of places that have been gentrified, but are seeing continued loss of those vulnerable populations being displaced. And then it's sort of like a gradation all the way to the yellow, where this is, you're not seeing the sort of changes, but all the conditions make that area susceptible for gentrification.
So it's like a predictor of the next
Exactly,
wave.
exactly, yeah. So,
So could you say a little more about, I'm looking at that yellow on the just east of 82nd, just as an example, can you illuminate what are the indicators happening over there? Because it's kind of surprises me.
so what she did is she just compared it to the rest of the market. So she looked at where there might be, you know, either increases in home property value higher than the rest of the city, where there would be a greater influx of white folks moving in, people with higher educational attainments.
Sorry, you
And
did
that-
just say
yeah.
that was a little distracting, okay.
Does that
I
make
follow
sense?
you,
Yeah.
yes.
And there's, we have these on our website as well. There's some other maps that show the sort of like how she builds the case to get there. We looked at this map to help us to sort of say, okay, well, so we have places where there's great opportunity, right? And there's places where there's not great opportunity. And then there are places that are changing and that where we know that there are vulnerable people, people who we want to serve. What should we do next? How should we use this information? So
So these units are neighborhoods?
Those are neighborhood, yes.
Neighborhood boundaries?
Yeah.
Look at those census tracts.
No, they're census
Okay,
tracts.
so they're groupings of census
Thank you,
tracts.
David.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Yeah.
So basically what we did is that sort of using this information, so we looked at all of these sort of layers of maps and said, okay, well, so how can we create a policy framework for the way that we use our resources, the way that we coordinate with our sister bureaus, to really think about the types of communities of opportunities that we want to be a part of helping to build or maintain. So what we did is we said, okay, well, we know where we have money, we know where we've made investments, we know where gentrification is supposed to happen, we know where we want to get people greater access to. And so we were able to sort of divide the city into 8 different areas. And based on those 8 different areas, we made some recommendations about over the next 5 years of the type of work that PHB might do based on those conditions. So the first page is really kind of like our high level recommendations. We can come back to that. But the second pages I think it starts with page 12. That's in our larger report. That's where we contain all of the different recommendations. So the last map, oh gosh, sorry. We're trying to figure out a way to make this really easy for you guys to get all of this information in a short period of time. So this last map right here, the dark blue outlines are sort of, this is the sort of map that has it all. This is the everything in the kitchen sink map. So this map right here is, the blue lines represent the ways that we divided the city into 8 different spaces. So you'll see that there's, there's a place that's in East Portland, Outer East Portland. There's a couple of different areas in Northeast, Southeast, and then the West Side. So, and then this map also contains sort of you can see where those hash marks are. That's the places that's the overlay of the gentrification. The darker gray, and we're going to continue to make the map prettier. The darker gray is the opportunity map, the combined indicator of opportunity map. And then there's urban renewal areas that are those sort of bluer areas as well. So I want to be respectful of time. So is there maybe a neighborhood that is of interest to you, and we can kind of go through what those recommendations are and hear feedback?
Kelly would be, that's something that keeps coming up.
Oh, look at you guys. Okay, so if you turn to the page, is that okay if we do Cully? I want, this side said Cully first, so what about this side? Is Cully okay? Okay, let me know. So if you look at the page that says, where is it? It's the page that is number
12.
Is it the first one? Of course it is. It's one thank you, Alan. So on the first page there is what we call Central and Outer Northeast. And so what we do is that we sort of do our analysis where we look at, Section 8 utilization. We talk about, whether it's a high opportunity area or medium or low. We also look at susceptibility for gentrification and displacement. We talk about the current resources that are there, and then we make recommendations. And then in each area, because they're pretty big, we spotlight a neighborhood. And so Cully is a neighborhood that we've spotlighted there. And, we've really focused in on Cully around wanting to do what we can to preserve the affordability that's there now, but really also connect with some of the work that's being done with the Parks Bureau, with the Transportation Bureau, to try to bring more amenities to Cully, and to really build off the work that's already being done in the community around, through the Let Us Build Cully. We've got great partners in Hacienda and NEA and PCRI and Habitat for Humanity. There's such a great coalition of folks. They've kind of laid out for us kind of what to do. So that's a neighborhood where it's pretty easy to respond to that. In our most recent NOFA, we invested in Hacienda, preserving Hacienda's big property out there on Killingsworth. So for this one, this is a place where we really want to try to preserve affordability, try to create home ownership opportunities so folks who are renters can sort of buy homes, be able to stay there longer term, and then also think about how we can work with fair housing education in there as well. So I probably left some things off, but so that's the sort of specific neighborhood and area recommendation. At a high level, what we say is that we want to get get smarter about the way that we're doing work. She's like, you are done. You've done too much. Thank you. So these are high-level recommendations. We want to get smarter about the way that we're working. We want to work in collaboration much more with the rest of the bureaus. I think the opportunity for housing, as a housing nerd, I think the opportunity is that we've been working really closely with BPS and trying to embed this policy at a level above our bureau-specific strategic plan, but also sort of at that next implementation level from the comprehensive plan. So we're trying to elevate our work, but also think about how we can be smarter and more collaborative in the way that we do it, responsive to these very dynamic things that are happening in the housing market. So,
Can I ask?
oh, sure.
I'm sorry. I just had a question, and you might have mentioned it, and I was thinking a lot while you were speaking, so I'm sorry if I
No, that's okay.
missed it. With all, these maps are incredible. Do you have any that take into account, minority population clusters or anything like that, so that you can really see how these indicators interact with all of that?
I want it duly noted, I'm like pitching for BPS. So BPS has this new map app that has that sort of layer, and it has, sort of where there is. The closest thing that we have is in the gentrification map, so not in the one that you have here, but ones that are on our website where they have the sort of concentration of all the vulnerable populations, not just communities of color. But the map app that BPS does have sort of where we're, tomorrow, Oregon On is the sort of affordable housing network organization. They're doing a sort of brown bag at the Unitarian Church at noon tomorrow about the Coalition for Livable Futures equity maps. And so they have that base, that sort of like base layer data there as well.
And then big picture, is there sort of like a dual track objective here of creating more opportunities, bringing good things to communities of color who are living in areas that don't have a lot of these good indicators in place already, and creating new opportunities where it's already rich in resources? So it's enriching those areas that need it and also creating new opportunities where they already exist.
Yeah, I mean, like, you just did our whole presentation. Yeah, I mean, I think succinctly that's what we want to do. I think that we don't have the resources to do all of those well. So it's a place where, there are certain neighborhoods, certainly in like outer southeast Portland, for example, where there is, that's one of the places where you saw some green, you saw some yellow. So the housing market is providing some levels of affordability. So that might not be the place where we make investments in sort of new construction rental housing. So we may take a back seat in that area, but we will sort of work to make sure that there's rent assistance for folks, vulnerable people who are living out there, that there's access to like home repair or like lead abatement, but also where we, sort of work with our partners at, parks and planning to sort of say, this is what we know about the population and the needs that are living in our housing that's out there. What can we do to collaborate to think about how we work together? So I like a big party. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity that this framework lets us have in terms of, opportunities to talk at a different level with a lot of the other implementation bureaus.
So
Oh,
I
sorry.
think we need to move on to
I'll
a
ask
manual
my other
next.
questions
And,
separately.
and then I think Amy had something to say, and then unfortunately we're going to have to move on.
Yeah, quickly, are these rated from high importance to low importance, or is it just, this is just a packet of maps? Like, is this what worked with the last?
No,
It's just-
no, they're just a packet of maps. But if you have thoughts about which one is the most important, I'd be interested to know.
Well, and then I guess the second part of the question is, we still waiting on CIO and the other organizations to collect data, or do you have everything we need to move forward, or we reach back to those stakeholders and get more information? And then where does this go after this? After you collected everything, BPS, is that the next step?
No, so I think, so we've got most of our information from those organizations. We've partnered with some of them in different ways in the past, and for some folks we haven't had a partnership for. So we'd like to think of, some of that as relationship building. We're just starting to date, so we want to, we want to continue to get to know each other. And so we definitely want to try to continue to get that information, and I think that's our sort of MO. The next steps really are, in terms of implementing sort of, we created this framework, like we created this container of the way that we want to make sure that we look at our investments. And the next thing is to kind of go through, the next time we do like a request for proposals for funding, the next time we update, policies or processes, we want to make sure people are thinking through all of these different factors before we make any changes, or also, trying to improve the way that we're doing stuff. So there's a whole lot of this.
Amy?
Just a couple of things. So on the mapping of the voter populations, I know that also crosses over with race and ethnicity. I'm wondering if the mapping for HCTF would be applicable, if there's any chance that collaboration between those two would be helpful.
We have a task force that's doing mapping of immigrant populations, so.
Oh, great.
We could talk about that maybe offline. We're working with Multnomah County on that.
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
And the second thing is, as a result of a recent roundtable we did with organizations working on human rights and civil rights, the idea has emerged that we're still throwing around doing a housing event that's a public forum for input. And I think I've run across something that you guys were planning or had already put together. Is there something in the works? And what is your outreach for that kind of input look like these days?
So we're at the point where we're sort of closing down the sort of this project. So we're at what we call the 95% draft. We spent the summer sort of like working with different, we've been to everywhere, we wanted to make sure that we got to you guys. So we're kind of closing down public input on this portion where we sort of established the big framework. But if you're interested in, maybe you're really interested in, home ownership as opposed to, homelessness, there's ways that you can connect with me and we can get people to that.
Okay, so the Bureau's not planning any kind of event or forum for the public?
We're right now, we're kind of coordinating with Oregon on, they wanted to do the Equity Atlas first, and so once they get through that, so we're thinking like sometime in January or December, something like this, but nothing's confirmed yet.
Public thing, okay. And then who should we talk to about that?
Yeah.
What's his chance
So,
that we can collaborate?
so David and Liam are in the back. David's our sort of lead person on this project. And so we'll send it to, we'll send the information to Kyle and to Jeff, sorry. We'll send the information to Jeff where you can find this information on our website. There's places where you can give input in the computer, but you can also call us or talk with us anytime. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. So I've let us fall dangerously. All right. But our presenters are just so good. Can't help it. So I think we could probably spend a lot of time talking about both of those, and maybe we will set aside some time in the next couple of months to maybe follow up on, getting involved more with police accountability and with that project, because it sounds like from the PHB perspective, that's an ongoing project, and that's going to inform their decision-making going forward, and so hopefully we can track that and see if there's anything that we can do or have to say about it. So, and it sounds like they'll be open to that. So I'm sorry to speed us along. So, just a few minutes behind schedule, the Community Discovery Committee has some time to tell us about where they've been and not where they've been, what they're doing, and I was not implying anything there. So go ahead, take it away.
That's me. Well, the big picture is we're looking at some organizational challenges. And let me go into some specifics about that. Not a challenge right now is the report. Myra and I are working pretty steadily on that. And we're at the stage where we're getting input from committee heads and just to indicate whether or not those recommendations that we have in draft are actually realistic or welcome, and how welcome those are. It looks like we're not going to omit much of anything that come from the roundtable, but those recommendations we'll do our best to be realistic about what we can handle in 2014 we're looking at right now, right? So much has changed with purpose. Strategy, we've cut that a little bit, because we've decided that we really just have the capacity to work events. So a couple of things that we'd originally hoped to put together, like looking for community space for these monthly meetings, and as well as receiving community input as it comes during these meetings. That's not going to be something that we're going to be able to hold. So just focusing on those events. At the very bottom, we're also changing our organizational structure. We're going to go back to a more traditional chair, one person being a chair, and then we've kind of assessed what the specific roles are that require these events to be pulled off. So while I don't think we are rigid with those very much, because we've established a way of working pretty collaboratively, we also want to be able to identify and distinguish the specific roles so people can be clear and run with them. So I want to highlight that in case anybody's specifically interested in getting involved with us, and feel free to talk to me or anybody. That's Diallo or Myra or Linda, who'll be back from Spain in a few weeks, we think. And we can get you more information. Or just show up at a meeting and let us know if you're interested, and we'll get you scheduled in for that. What else am I missing? So we invited community organization leaders who attended the roundtable to let us know if they were interested in a public forum. And we scheduled a meeting for that, and so far we've only met with Michael Moore of Sisters. And considering the hot topic of houselessness running right now, and comments that we received at the roundtable, we began to look at how about planning a specific public forum for homelessness. Excuse me, calling it homeless rights was where we started brainstorming, and then addressing the different subtopics to that, which might also include things like gentrification, right? So, and then we attempted to move forward and realized that we were probably going ahead of ourselves, because we hadn't had a chance to communicate with HRTF, which we feel is really important. And I had been at a meeting with you guys knowing that that was something you guys were working on as well. So we're kind of in a holding pattern for that right now, and as a result, and also in terms of losing Myra in our larger capacity, we decided that we're not going to be able to put on a November public forum. And so we're looking at that after the start of the year. So that's pretty much where we're at. Anything I missed?
I think also just mentioning that there was an intention primarily to connect with the housing rights task force to make sure that we're not duplicating anything and we're supporting it in case or just internal coordination, but then also touching base with the Bureau of Housing. So as to make sure, like Amy, you're speaking, are you doing something or not, and how, just to make sure that we're not like doing something that's already been done or coordinated. So I think those two components, and me, having a baby and all that, and that part of it. So it really kind of became clear that, we might have to wait a little bit just to make sure that we're coordinating it effectively and agreements with whoever we need to be before we go into this event.
Yeah, we really want it to be as strong as the roundtable was, as thoughtful, and at this kind of success. And I think that was most of our decision, was we're not gonna be able to assure that for us to do it in November. So that's what I know. Any questions?
When is an ETA for the report?
Oh. Well,
ETA?
as to which time.
oh, sorry.
So
Do we have any idea
it
when
really
we might do?
depends on the input back from the committee. So we originally wanted to get it done last Friday, but then not getting input in a timely manner kind of has put us on some, because we're kind of dependent on what comes back to us. So we
So for example, I'm waiting on Danita and Damon to have a chance to send their comments on our
Is there anybody else that you're waiting on?
No,
Okay,
no.
okay. I think, yeah, but it's,
I haven't seen anything, so I was
Oh,
wondering.
we're gonna, it's gonna be easy. We're gonna do that after the meeting. Do you have a second?
So once you get that information that you need, when do you think you could have the report?
3 or 4 days.
okay.
What I'm not sure that we're clear about is the process by which the final is approved. We were kind of assuming that once, if it's getting a committee okay, that it's not gonna need HRC approval. He's shaking his head. Kyle is, okay.
It's your report,
Yeah.
so you get to submit it. What we do with it after that, depends on what we want to do with it, but yeah, it's your report,
I
so
see.
we don't need to.
So if it,
You'll
for
tell
us to
us
make
when
it a
it's
public document, might be an HRC call.
It is.
It already is a public document, but I
Never
think,
existed.
yeah. But when we get it, we can either send it to council or keep it in-house or however. I think that is up to the HRC, but it's up to you guys what it says. Yeah, all right, well, thanks very much. Anything else from CEC? Okay. Okay, folks. Don't all rush to the front of the room at once to become the new chair and vice chair of the Human Rights Commission. Now, everybody just relax.
So kind of running, do we have any nominees?
We have one nominee currently for vice chair, and that's Linda McDowell. She is in Spain.
She's in Spain.
She did send me an email.
Is that one, is that?
She did send me an email accepting that nomination. And so, you know, I think we need to have a conversation about what we're gonna do here, because we currently don't have any nominees for chair. And we just force somebody to do it as much as I would like to.
I could hear that in your email between the lines.
I'm sure you did.
I am thinking something.
So, you know, as I said in the email that I sent out yesterday, you know, Ashley and Amy both emailed me explaining their reasoning for not being able to do it, and that's completely understandable. I'm starting to get loud, I'm sorry.
She wants to make
But she's like, I'll do it.
There we go.
She could do it.
Problem solved.
And I think that, you know, it's certainly worth exploring if we want to talk about a different organizational structure. I personally think that the reason we're having these problems is that we have a really new group right now. We've had a lot of turnover this year, and there are a lot of people who can do it, but just don't really want to jump in right now. I also think that although I am very much, you know, open to the discussion, and it's not up to me whether we have a discussion about it, I definitely think that having a leadership structure, sort of like the one that the HRC has always had, is important just because of the nature of our commission, just the way that we're set up, having one meeting a month, having to have somebody accountable, and having to have decision-making abilities without caucusing about every decision that's made. I think it would be really challenging to have governance by committee on a commission like this. But I think that we can certainly open it up for conversation. We had 15 minutes to vote, and I have some ideas about how we could do this in the short term, but I want to open it up to Amy and Ashley at least to talk about their ideas, or Roy sounds like he's got something to say. So.
Oh, I was just gonna say that aren't these positions in our bylaws?
They are, but we can change it. That would be, I think it would be a longer term thing if we want to have this organizational restructuring conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this strikes me as an organizational challenge / opportunity. I mean, it's definitely, it may be that we've hit a temporary situation, but I'm not sure. And my thought was, is there a chance that we could glean insight from who's in the room here about, a little practically, why isn't that role reasonable for me right now? Beyond the personal challenges, you know, that we're facing with our everyday lives. look at some shifts, that would make it more available for people to fit in.
You mean like changing some of the duties of the chair or the vice chair to try to make it more,
You should work it lean then.
a little bit easier?
What?
You work it lean then.
Let's lean.
It's a good use of that word, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I think so.
That was just my.
To try to
thought.
explore
Yeah.
ways to change
It's,
this.
I think,
What's not working?
exactly, I think what you're saying is, what is in the position that discourages somebody from being in it, more than reforming it or what.
I'll be honest about why I think it is. I mean, I was the chair, and I was the chair. Abdul has been the chair. I think what's different from where we have been is we're missing a very strong leadership role, and this isn't anything to do about Jeff, in our staffing. So we had a very different structure in place that brought forward and mentored leadership in this organization, and we don't have that structure now. So quite frankly, my assumption is that when you became chair, it was because Maria Lisa asked you to, said this is what the role is, I think you'd be good at it, and that's kind of how you came forward.
Actually, by the commission.
By the whole commission?
The
Okay.
whole commission, actually. I
And
was
did-
elected, but,
Elected, but
yeah,
did you have that conversation with others on the committee or with the staff at that point?
before I was, no, actually, I was vice chair.
Okay.
And somehow Jeff Gogan nominated me to be the chair.
Okay.
But I feel like this. But one point you hit on it, which is really valuable one, is when, and okay, this has nothing to do with your duty, I won't pick on you here, is when I was a chair, it was very helpful to have a clear duties of the person who's staffing the team. And that helps me also to know how am I going to organize my life and the responsibility and accountability for myself toward that position. And also putting accountability and responsibility on the person who was staffed there, that this is what I need from you. For example, I was very active around going downtown when there is a shooting or issues. You find me like this with the committees, word walks, that. Why? Because I told Maria Lisa, if something happened, I want a call from you or from anybody to me now, and they want you, expect you to write something quick, run it by the commission, send it to me, and we will get it. So it was a really cohesive way, and there is a duties like that. I think now it's ambiguous. If am I going to become a chair, this is what I'm feeling. Prove me wrong if I'm saying. If I'm going to be a chair, I am, like you, I'm very proud, happy what you have been doing accommodation for. It is, if I stepped in here, am I going to be typing this? Am I going to be doing this? Am I going to be doing this? What am I going to be doing? Am I going to be calling this? If there's an event, am I going to be typing or me making some words? So this, I think this is the real challenge that is existing in the room. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I think that's right. And just so, I mean, Sam and Sonji and Emmanuel haven't been here for very many meetings. And so, do you guys know what we're talking about? How the structure is different now than it was then? That
Vaguely.
when HRC first was reestablished in 2008, I guess. Maria Lisa, it was the Office of Human Relations, and the HRC and the Office of Human Relations were created at the same time. And the full-time bureau director of the Office of Human Relations was the director of the Human Rights Commission. And so she ran the commission, really. I mean, she was the one the chair set the agenda, but Maria Lisa did most of the stuff that Abdul was talking about.
it's like a role of, I'm sorry, it's a role of, we run the commission.
Right.
Sure. But it was like a role of a support staff that is in there to type of.
She was like an administrator. She
Yeah.
did, I mean, everything. I mean, she would do all writing the press releases and doing all that kind of stuff. And so it was, and she was full-time. Jeff's part-time, and he's got a lot of work to do, and he's already working more than 20 hours a week for us.
And that office also had a staff of 3 people.
Right, so it wasn't
Which
just
was
for
created
her.
to support
And the whole purpose of the office was
was
to
to
staff
support
the
the commission.
Right.
And its work.
And so we were created under that system, and now we're trying to do the same work with just us, just volunteers, and then Jeff's, and again, amazing work that Jeff is doing, way more than 20 hours a week, I know for a fact.
But it's a different
But
role
it's
that we're at.
a totally different role, and Jeff has internal conflicts. He cannot be, he's conflicted, no.
Jeff, here's voice.
It's like a lot.
Well, I mean, can I explain that real quick?
Sure.
You know, the Human Rights Commission is a voluntary commission that works, operates independently under the umbrella of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Basically, OEHR is responsible for funding and staffing with this part-time staff person. The issue comes into play, it was nothing, we were kind of learning as we went when I came on. The issue around a city employee putting out, press releases and things like that for the commission, is that the communications that the commission, is putting out with outreach should come from the commission. It shouldn't come from a city employee that's staffing the commission. It should be coming from the commission.
Well, who is also the communications director or coordinator.
Right, so I'm also the
for
communications director for the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So when you have, and no one expects the Office of Equity and Human Rights, or no one expects the Human Rights Commission to agree with everything that the Office of Equity and Human Rights is putting out. That's not what the expectation is. And as we've seen before, there's been a situation where someone on the Human Rights Commission publicly made it known that that he or she was not happy with a certain aspect of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Publicly said that, and that, that's what the Human Rights Commission should be allowed to operate. So that's kind of the difference now. My quick question though is, were there, with the staffing of Maria and Lisa before, was there a rush of people also wanting to be chair then?
Well, it didn't work that way then.
Okay.
It was, you had a conversation, and like Jeff asked Abdul, you want to be chair? And that's what we changed this year, because there were some transparency problems with the way that we were doing it then. And that's fine, but this is what happens. We have a broader conversation at that point, because it's not quite as seamless. And democracy is not seamless.
And I think I'll just say one quick thing, sorry, but can I just say one quick thing? I think it's good to have this discussion, and I'm glad Amy brought it up, because if we don't have this discussion, then it looks like people want to serve on the Human Rights Commission, but they're not willing to step up to lead it. But this is a good conversation to have, because then we can find out what those options are.
Lloyd, I think, should.
So, I don't think the lack of nominees, people willing to accept nominations, is due to the way what we changed recently and how we do these elections. I think what we changed simply expanded a bit how we were already doing it. There would be conversations amongst commissioners or, Maria, Lisa, or whatever. I think you would be a good chair, or, I'd like to nominate you, or whatever. I assume that at some level those conversations are continuing. What we have now is a window of time that's clearly prescribed for everybody, and I think that's a good thing. Whereas before, we'd show up at the meeting and it's like, oh, today's election, so who wants to nominate who? And if people had organized ahead of time, then that's what happened, and if you hadn't really thought about it, then you were kind of caught off guard. So this process is good in that respect. I don't think it's playing a role in why people are agreeing with it. I think what you said about the turnover and what Alan was saying about the lack of the ability to develop new leadership, because one of the things that happened, Jeff was the original chair, Abdul was the vice chair. Abdul became the chair, and I think there was some combination of Danita. I think it was Danita was the vice chair. Then she became the chair, and it's just kind of progressed that way until more recently where we haven't followed that model, which is okay because we're not bound by it. But you had someone who had served for a year as vice chair, seeing what went on, seeing how things were done, ready and willing to step in and say, okay, I'll be the chair again. So I think that and that's a function Maria Lisa was able to coordinate, making sure that people got the support they needed or understood what was going on, how to do things. And we don't have Maria Lisa, and we don't have time that she gave now.
Well, you don't have that position.
We're gonna have that position, we don't have
Yeah,
what
I
came
mean,
with
she was
it.
like the administrator.
I don't, people have approached me throughout my time and asked if I would consider chair or vice chair, and every time I've wanted to, and it's not an issue of feeling concern about ability to lead, in terms of skill set, passion, drive, all of that, it's always been limit on time.
Yeah.
And frustration with my last position, which I've since left, where I was living out of a suitcase 75% of the time, nationally, and, that's not something I could change, and then now my new position, I'm in Salem and commuting almost every day for an hour and 15 minutes each way, and wouldn't possibly be able to be physically present enough to take on the meetings that I think need to take place, and not wanting to inconvenience everyone and only have weekend or late night meetings and people wanting to, take out the aggression on me for that. So I just wanted to share my personal, it has absolutely nothing to do with feeling comfortable with leadership, or like I feel like there has been mentorship, maybe it's been more indirect since I've joined, but a lot of us come with other leadership development experiences outside of this that have prepared us to take on that kind of position as well. So my question is, and my observation, Amy and I had similar sort of, let's take a step back, there's an issue here, and I don't think it's a reflection of lack of interest or passion or capability in terms of the actual skill set. I think there's something else going on. I think we've built a stronger Human Rights Commission with more responsive and proactive committees, structures, and products, and community engagement expectations, and things that we're continuing to build. I'm curious, and maybe this won't be addressed or resolved today, but how do we make space for people to serve in leadership positions who have full-time employment and some who can still, be a part of the HRC in a really contributory way? My experience has been the chairs that since I've been, it seems like the role of the chair has gotten increasingly involved, because you went from having Maria Lisa Johnson, who's incredible, who was on her way out when I joined, and the other staff, and when you have dedicated staff who are paid to do that work, that's very different than people who are scrambling on the side to either get a job or have full-time work and are trying to make space for the work. So it's really this issue, and so I thought of a couple things that might be horribly unpopular, and that's fine, but I looked at the hate crimes group, and they're looking at decreasing the number of full meetings that they have, but doing a lot of work in committees in between time. I don't know if that would be of interest, but just looking at maybe once every 2 months meeting as a large group, but continuing the committee and executive committee and other meetings, community engagement events that are scheduled. Just looking at ways to still be really effective and accessible and responsive, but also make it doable and sustainable.
I think actually though, you might be waiting and Jeff might be waiting ahead of me.
Go ahead. Thank you. Sam?
I have two questions or two statements, I guess. So, do you want to continue to serve?
Thank you,
I
Kyle.
think we can answer for Kyle. Say it.
Let's vote.
I second
No,
that.
I can't. I really can't. I mean, I've got an idea for
Personal.
family and business. I've been doing it. This is not. I will say this. It's not a job that is impossible to do. It just takes some time, and after a year of doing it, I feel like I need to. And I was vice chair the year before, and so I just feel like I need to refocus my attention a little bit more on work, and I'm expecting, and so I'm really excited about taking some more time for family and all that. So I have sort of an idea for a stopgap measure, but it would involve me serving for just a little bit more time if we can't do it.
Yeah,
But-
so that brings.
So go ahead.
So the two things I was gonna say is, one is I think the leadership is really, really important, and we don't need to change the leadership, and, you were willing to stay on it, you should stay on, or, the other thing is too, is that I don't have a problem with stepping up and being a leader, but I kind of equate, life and sports in the same way. It's like, if I just join a new team, if I don't know the playbook, I'll go in, and I'll run the ball and I'll do what I had to do to make it happen, but, I may block the wrong guy. So, so I'm saying is, I'm committed to this, but I don't think I think when we need a strong leadership that knows, that can step up and continue what you have been doing, and not take a step back. and I don't know that I'm at the place personally, just talking about myself, that I can do that. So that's just speaking for me
Is that
personally.
official self-nomination?
Yeah, so I nominate myself, no.
I share the same sentiment as Sam, and I think as new commissioners, we want to be, especially me, I want to be very engaged. But I think it is a disservice to not have the opportunity to really witness what the commission has achieved over these years, and really be able to sit back and look and learn. And so perhaps that is another opportunity for us to discuss, you know, what does a mentoring process look like? Because ultimately, we are coming in off the street to the meetings, we see each other, and then unless we are part of a committee or doing some active committee work, the chances of us really receiving that one-on-one mentoring or that support actually decreases the less that we start to see each other. And things pop up. I know I had a death in my family. And so those types of things, you know, how are we staying connected and mentoring folks to ensure that even if they are, you know, new, they still see the urgency for them to be prepared if there is an opportunity for them to lead in the near future, so.
Jeff? Yeah, I think that, I certainly understand what Sam and Sonji said. I disagree is a little strong, but I think that when you have an organization like this, it's good to have turnover in leadership. Obviously, strong leadership is important. I think it's good to have people who have fresh perspectives and a new way of looking at things. Who, you know, and there's a support system here. It's not just you're in charge and you know, there's bylaws, there's staff that's not a bureau director, but it's staff. There's immediate past chair, there are people on HRC who have been chairs before. So there is some, maybe the mentoring should be maybe a little more official or a little more defined, but there is a safety net there. There is a support network there for new commissioners. And there's no prerequisite for a commissioner who has served a long time to, you know, be, I mean, it's great to have somebody in the leadership chair who's saying, who's not saying that's what we've always done, or the way we've always done it. Not that anyone's doing that, but it's, I think fresh perspective is great, and it shouldn't be a prerequisite to serve on the board.
So you nominated.
If I could nominate, you know who I nominate, I would nominate several people. But anyway, so that's.
So I think this is Amy, did you want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for all the input. And something that I have been seeing, observing, and been trying to weave that into the discussion we've been having around organization and communication with Kyle and John and Ashley is, my personal feeling is that the executive committee is heavy with responsibility, and all the myriad work that we're doing in committee, the extent to which major decisions have to funnel through executive committee makes it very burdensome. So this is probably unpopular among some, but I would like us to look at allowing more authority to endorsed committee chairs to make final decisions about press releases and statements. And that will relieve the executive committee weight in a great degree. That's just a broad stroke, you know, but I do want that to be on the table.
I'm not sure that in the next 29 minutes that we're going to solve this issue.
It has to be more than the next 29 seconds, actually. You guys will.
So the next 23 seconds, we won't be able to. So I think we should figure out exactly what you're saying, Kyle. What are we going to do next, and how do we solve this next issue? Because I think we did get some great input tonight. And I think talking about time and how we solve the burdensome issue that is placed on the chair at this point, you know, how do we solve those? I think it's a good conversation to have. But I don't think we do it next 20 seconds.
Short term, you should nominate him, he knows since he's at home.
And just
Yeah,
to
his
add,
daughter's my
I see Levon in the room, I'm gonna,
Nominate her?
well, I have a feeling that Peacock might have some insight for us, so.
Well, we also have another commissioner.
And there's not, oh yeah, there you are. Maybe not right now, but.
I think when we have this conversation, we need to be mindful of our history and the way we were created and the reasons that it was created the way it was, and why it's different than a lot of other commissions in this city. So I just want to put that out there, and I think it's a different conversation than we can have right now.
2 seconds or very
Go
fast?
ahead.
Just really interested to hear from chairs what they think they could give away or could be helped with if there were tasks that you felt like fell on your shoulders and it was like, well, goodness, it would be really helpful if X, Y, or Z would be in place so that I don't have to carry this. And we don't have to talk about that now, but I'm really interested in the, how can we help so that that isn't
Yeah.
too burdensome.
For me, I'll answer that question quickly, as fast as I can. For me, what I will see is one, what Amy mentioned, is before, and I still remember I was sitting like where Jeff was sitting one time, we were trying to make a decision about housing or something like that. And they said, since you are the committee, and you are the chair of the committee, I trust you. And you know what in our minds and what we want. You do not need to wait for me to come to this commission and say, you should approve it. As well as I mentioned one time, about Kyle, when I said, Kyle, you are the chair. You know where we need to stand, write something and make a decision. We can send it to us or move forward with it. We trust you. You know what? That's what needs one to be done. The other thing is when I was a chair, I wasn't just running out there, but I was making some good educational decisions, but I wasn't frustrated or confused with who should speak on what. Should I speak on behalf of Human Rights Commission? Should I go to this event and find who is in the commission who need to go to the event? Literally, sometimes one time I had, this was, did the surgery for my eye, and Hector called me, told me there is things going in the community. I told him, you know what, I will try to be there this afternoon. That's what I used to do. But we had also the Margarita discussion, things like that. So for us is, if we have somebody that can really, or maybe we should recruit a volunteer in this commission, or work experience, or there's other programs that can do that have put staff in, or typing things like that. But for me, to be honest with you, I would have never enough time, and they get really tired of it because that's what I do my job, is writing a long memo or typing. What I used to do, pick up the phone, call Marisa, and tell her what I would like to see in a letter. Then I present it quickly to the vice chair or the executive committee and move on. For me now, it is like more like cumbersome, more steps and things like that that can discourage. If we can decentralize it, like you were talking about, and giving power to others, giving power also to the vice chair, from the chair, dismantling that issue of power, and also the executive committee becoming like really clear open. I think a lot of people would like to do that. From I will promise, as a previous chair, whoever became a chair, I hate emails, but if you become a chair and you need my support, call me anytime. I'll give you ideas, I will support you. I can write something or help with that. I'll be happy to do that. To mentor you, not mentor you, but to provide support to you. Or ideas if you have a question, I'll be happy to do that.
It also might help in recruitment when you're interviewing prospective human rights commissioners. And you may already do this, I don't know, but to remind them that there is a time commitment. That may be beyond, because you all put in a lot more time than I think anyone would guess happens for a volunteer commission.
So I think this is a conversation we should continue to have. And I think that everybody, there are good ideas coming from all directions. I don't think it's something we can resolve today. We've got a couple of things we need to do. We do need to elect some executive committee members. Here is my thank you. I will volunteer to serve until the end of the year. And
End of 2014?
End of 2013.
Oh my
I have an announcement to make. Sonji has been elected chair of the Communications Committee by the Communications Committee per our bylaws. And there are only two of us, so we get it. So Sonji is now going to be on the executive committee. Sonji is somebody who has been mentioned as a potential leader. And so it might be a good opportunity if, and this is not saying that this is definitely a succession plan or anything like that, but to give Sanji the opportunity to come to some executive committee meetings, to come to any meeting that I am at for the next couple of months, and then continue to use me and Abdul, and I'm sure Alan, as a resource, as former chairs. It would make sense to me to continue to serve throughout the rest of the year, to elect Linda today as vice chair, as the nominee for chair, vice chair. She did send me an email accepting the nomination. And so I will continue on as chair with with everybody knowing that I'm going to resign as chair as of December 31st, 2013. And then we can figure out if we want to do the same structure, then either Sonji could, if she feels comfortable at that point, then Sonji could be chair, or somebody else if we wanted to reopen, and we would have to just reopen the nominations period. Or we would have that couple of months to figure out an alternative if that's what the group wanted to do. And by that time, we'll have the opportunity to have done that. And also in that time, there could be a hybrid of it all, where we figure out that the chair can give up certain functions and we could decentralize a little bit. So it just gives us a little bit more time. It's kind of like being the Congress. We can kick the can down the road to the end of December.
I just have a logistical question.
Yeah.
Does this mean we have to have the election at the December meeting?
I would resign, well, no, we would have to have, yes, we would have to have the election at the December meeting.
Can we proceed to stay through the January meeting, October, November, early?
The first Wednesday. You might be able to convince me of that.
Because I think that would give us the time we need to, because otherwise it's just.
That's true.
One.
Okay, I would agree to that.
Yeah.
Dale, and then maybe.
So while I agree with decentralization, will that have to change the bylaws too much? And say the chair becomes just a person to coordinate meetings, agendas, would that not be a chair anymore? Would that just be a point person?
I think that's a good point. I don't think that would ever happen, just because I think that we have to have somebody who's more of a point person. But as far as the bylaws go, we can change the bylaws. We're free to do that. It's in the bylaws that we can do that. So, I mean,
Just to piggyback off what Sanji and Sam said, like, not that I was ducking the position or, ducking being nominated, like, anything I would nominate myself to be vice chair, but in addition to that, I do like to sit back and participate and kind of just feel everything out before I, accept a position, I do the wrong play. So, I just want to put my little 2 cents in there, and I regretfully have to get her.
That's okay.
Back to my meeting.
just so we have a quorum still. We do. Okay.
But,
Thank you, though. And I think everybody understands that.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, first of all, we've got a lot of new people. And second of all, how great is it that none of us have time to do this? It's a good thing. It's a good problem to have. We're all working hard on social justice issues in our everyday lives. So I think it's amazing that we have that. And Amy?
Getting back to your suggestion, was that about nominating Linda to serve with you through now January? Okay, it could, so I'm
She
saying
could do
there's an
whatever she
alternate
wants.
solution also, is that we would nominate, somebody could nominate her just through January. That would also give us time to look at the whole scenario.
Well, she's volunteered to be chair for vice chair for the.
Yeah, I don't want to do that to her because she's been nominated for the year.
And the chair term would be
A year.
from January to October.
Well, no, I mean, I would be elected for this year, for
Right.
October 31st, 2013 through October 31st, 2014. And then you guys know, I'm gonna resign. That's just, I mean, I can still resign. But but the nomination has to be,
Interim.
well, I think, if you want, but I think that the nomination has to be for the year.
Well, I nominate Kyle to be chair.
Yes.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor of Kyle being chair for this year? Go ahead. Congratulations, Kyle. And,
Did anyone abstain or say no? No? Okay.
and so thank you all for your vote of confidence.
One last thing, sorry.
Linda.
Thank you for doing that, by the way. But real quick, any changes as we move forward, any changes to what we're doing? We have to keep in mind public meeting law and what's involved with that. So that's, as we're thinking about that, we may have to bring Tracy Reed back in and
Yeah.
her blessing on that.
Right, yeah, no like, mass emails and stuff about changing.
And keeping in mind the transparency is important if
Right.
we decentralize stuff. And
Right.
And I think we should start.
Linda McKimbell has been nominated for vice chair for the 2013-2014 year ending on October 31st, 2014. All in favor of, so we need to have somebody move to elect Linda,
Well,
because she was nominated.
Ellen nominated you, and the vote was for the election as well.
Somebody seconded the nomination.
Who seconded the nomination? Wait, okay.
Okay. So Linda McKimbell has been nominated. Let's have somebody second the nomination. Okay. All in favor of Linda McKimbell becoming vice chair for 2013-2014?
Who moved? Sorry.
I move. Show of hands or not? Opposed? Abstentions? Amy and Abdul.
Abdul and Amy. Okay, so these are both terms through the end of October 2014, and you'll just resign.
And everybody knows that that's gonna happen. Actually, did we just have 8 votes for Linda?
No.
I think we
Doesn't do
need
that. We have 2 abstentions.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I think this is a great opportunity for us to do, just like everybody's saying, revisit how we do things. It is different now, but there is a lot of support out there for whoever does want to come in. And we certainly didn't get the wrong idea from any new people not wanting to jump right in.
So the process of revisiting,
Oh, yeah.
Over the next 2 months?
yeah.
I think we should have a meeting that's not a regular meeting. That's what I think, because it'd be nice to have a nice
So,
chunk of time to do it.
executive committee.
So that'll be a public meeting.
set
That'll
that.
be a public meeting. So what we'll do is talk about that at the executive committee meeting, and that is in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Or should we try to schedule it before that? Do you think we can use Doodle, Jeff?
Pardon me?
Just
Do you think we
schedule
can use
it.
Doodle? I think we can use Doodle to schedule meetings because it's not business that we're talking about that's going to come to a vote. So we.
It is business that involves a quorum of
Setting
the Human Rights Commission. Any discussion that involves a quorum of the Human Rights Commission that pertains to Human Rights Commission business cannot be doodled, emailed, teleconference. It's a
Okay.
public meeting.
So, who in this room is interested in partaking in that conversation, other than I? So,
Same.
can you
Okay.
send an email to just those people?
Well, I think you have to give the opportunity to the folks that aren't here.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a public meeting. How we arrange it, I think we need to figure out.
Just needs to be a special session. You can do that. Just have to announce it a week ahead.
Well, but we have to
No,
figure out when it's gonna be.
Can we use
That's
a
the
doodle
thing,
to
is
set it up?
organize
Can't you
the meeting.
discuss it but not vote on it and have it not be a public meeting? Like it's a
No,
retreat?
it's a quorum.
Would it be possible
It's
to
a public meeting.
suggest 4 days and have people go on to the appointment monkey or whatever that thing's called, the
Survey monkey.
appointment setter, what's that called?
Doodle survey?
Doodle monkey, doodle?
It's a vote.
Now
You're
we're
probably thinking
It's a
survey
discussion.
monkey.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, we'll figure it out. Let's figure it out. We'll figure it out offline.
Can you
Alright.
send an email to 6 of us? Then the another 6 people?
I just want to remind the commission that the reason for public meeting laws is for transparency.
We're not
And you're
trying
doing the
to
people's
evade.
business. I don't think you're trying to evade,
We've
but
got
I'm just saying
15
that's
minutes
it.
left in this
Okay,
meeting,
so
so
what
we're
is your
trying to figure this
suggestion?
out. We're not trying to evade
No,
anything.
what's the
We're trying to figure out the
suggestion?
best way to
What do
actually
you-
schedule this.
What do you think is a healthy solution?
I think you guys come up with the commissioners present, come up with a date, you vote on it, and we move forward, just like everything else.
All right, let's come up with a date. So
Gotta be at least a weekend.
how about, we're trying to come up with a date for a special meeting.
A special.
Yeah.
Don't ever leave the room.
Why
Would
you guys
everybody
select
be
the
open
chair?
would everybody be open to doing this at like a lunch, like a noon to 2 o'clock type meeting?
If
Would
it's on
everybody
Monday,
be?
If If it's on a Monday, other than that, I work. If it's on a Monday, I can probably do it.
You just can't, really? What do you,
It works.
Oh,
well, we all work.
oh no, let me, okay. I go between 4 campuses. I'm traveling all around the city. So for me, literally, it's.
So what times?
That's where sometimes I start working and some
What times
commissions
would
around
work for you?
lunchtime.
What times would work?
Anytime late in the afternoon or really
Do we do an
early in the
evening
morning.
meeting? Do we do an evening meeting?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
That would be great.
How about, do we have any days of the week that are just out for people?
What about fourth Wednesday, since we meet in Wednesdays, fourth Wednesday, because we have 5 Wednesdays this month.
We have a how about the third Wednesday? How about October 16th?
No, we have
No,
the
CPRC.
CPRC.
How about,
Second Wednesday?
how about Tuesday the 15th? No, October. Tuesday the 15th?
Yes.
Sure.
15?
What time?
5:30.
Downtown.
Can we do it here, Jeff?
I don't know, I'll have to see what works for them.
Okay. Would that date work for everybody if we scheduled it for 5:30 on October 15th?
Yes.
Okay.
So
let's, should we have an alternative? Well, I'm gonna ask for alternative.
Yeah, we'll see how-
So can we do, how about the following week, Tuesday the 22nd at 5:30 again? Just so we have
I'd prefer that, that's better for
I'm
me.
sorry, I can't keep up. Say it again.
Tuesday the 22nd, October Tuesday the 22nd.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have a conflict at 5:30?
My wife made me travel to Seattle, so I can't commit on that.
You could tell them.
I could.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's do, let's look at if, so I will move
I'd prefer the
for,
22nd as the first choice.
okay. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. I move for a special session of the HRC Tuesday, October 22nd at 5:30 PM. With the alternative being if the space is not available or we don't have staff available at that time, Tuesday, October 15th at 5:30 PM at OEHR offices.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Is staff,
Abstentions?
is staff required to?
Yes, because we can't be here without staff.
And also we have to.
So thank you in advance.
So
Let me
can
just
we
know
meet-
about the-
I have another option. Can we meet off-site?
Yes.
We
Why
can.
why we don't meet off-site?
Because,
Because I have to,
can we try to do it here? I mean, everybody, we've got it kind of worked out now. Is it okay? No? Okay, where do you want to meet?
Oh, no, I'm not saying no, I'm just thinking about the whole thing.
I'm just trying to get this done so that we
No,
can get to
for
our
me,
business.
I don't want to be the space to be the barrier for us to meet.
Yeah.
So if,
what would it be a barrier? We meet here every,
no, you, okay. I apologize, maybe my comments, never mind.
No.
No, I was saying, when your answer was, we don't know, we have to look at the space. What I'm saying is, if there is, this space is not
I'm
available,
sorry, you're right.
I
Okay.
don't want to be space to problem, I want to meet.
I misunderstood, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're
Me
saying,
too.
I mean, as an
So
alternative?
is there an alternative space we could meet that we don't have to like
Could be at
arrange,
PCC.
because we have to do this tonight, so.
Can we meet at PCC? I'll meet with space at PCC.
Okay.
I don't know if we have to arrange a space.
We don't have to, the space is not in the
Okay.
motion.
So,
We'll figure it out.
okay,
Thank you.
how about that? It wasn't in my motion, but let's do, can we do the 22nd and then the 15th, the same dates in preference, and we'll try to do it at PCC? Is that okay with everybody at 5:30?
I can't, I mean,
You
I don't include the space in
I
the
need to
motion.
be there.
You need to be there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's in the space.
So let's not even worry about the space right now.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the date, we're gonna figure it out,
Mhm.
okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Is that okay?
I'll know if we can have the space 5 minutes after this meeting.
Okay, awesome.
Great.
Thank you. So we need to move on to the Emily Gottfried Human Rights Awards. The Human Rights Awards Committee met and decided on, obviously, there are 3 awards being given. The Lifetime Achievement Award, the Outstanding Group or Organization Award, and the Individual Emerging Leader Award. We already voted some time ago to award the Lifetime Achievement Award to Emily Gottfried and to rename the awards in her honor. So that's done. We do have confirmation that Emily's husband Jeff is going to be there to accept the award on her behalf, and I'm working on getting the Attorney General to make the presentation. And I've spoken to her calendar person, and she is working with the Attorney General on that, who is out of town at a conference right now, so I should hear about that on Monday. Jeff's also working on getting Abel Gordley, Senator Gordley, to be our keynote speaker. Do we have any update on that yet?
She's not responding.
Okay.
Just a little, I'm very close with her, so if that's the issue, I can.
I spoke with her personally. She sent me an email, and I sent to me. So I'm gonna give her a call on Friday.
Yeah, if we can't, I'm not, if you need help, we're tight with those, so I'll give her anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're hopeful about that. The committee met and discussed the nominees. The nominees were fantastic. There were many of them, not too many to go through right now, but I sent out an email to everybody today with a description of the recipients that we would like to present. The first is for the group board, the Mackenzie River Gathering Foundation, MRG. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at that email, but they're a fantastic organization which provides money, funding to other social justice organizations, and does it in a really creative and innovative way by including members of those organizations on their board and committees. And it's really fantastic. On the email I wrote down just an example of some of the groups that have been the beneficiaries of MRG, including VOS, Apano, Street Roots, Opal, Northwest Workers Justice Project. So it's been said by a lot of people that without MRG, none of these other social justice groups would even be around. And so I think we as a committee think that it's a really appropriate place to start. So as a committee, we would move that the HRC award the Outstanding Group or Organization Award for the Emily Godfrey Human Rights Awards to MRG. Do we need a second?
You don't need a second on the committee, right?
Okay. So all in favor of...
Or discussion first.
Anybody have any discussion? Do we want to discuss? No?
Call the question.
Okay. So all in favor of awarding the Outstanding Group Award to MRG, show of hands and aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So we'll get in touch with their representatives and let them know the good news. Thanks. For the Emerging Leader Award, the committee chose Aaron Ridings. I'm not sure if anybody had an opportunity to read the summary, but I'll just quickly go through it. He's a social justice advocate. He is active and emerging as a leader in the fight for individual rights in the LGBTQ community. He's currently a consultant to the Oregon State Schools and Communities Coalition, where he was a board member. He's active with the Q Center. He has worked with the Office of Citizen Involvement. He was on Commissioner Deborah Kafouri's staff. And he has worked with the LGBTQ community through the Equity Foundation, Cascade AIDS Project, Trans Active Education and Advocacy. The list really goes on and on with Mr. Ridings, and I'd encourage everybody to look him up online. There's plenty to see, plenty to read. He's really, I think, a great example of what an emerging leader is and what we think that award should be recognizing. So, does anybody have anything to say about that award or about Mr. Ridings? He was nominated by Myra, who unfortunately is here to pump him up, so I will do my best. No? Okay. All right. Well, I would, the committee would move that the HRC award the Emerging Leader Award for 2013 to Mr. Ridings. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Mr. Writings and tell him the good news. So that is
The date change.
yes, date change. So Jeff Gottfried and his daughters are going to Patagonia on December 4th. So the December 5th did not work for them, and so Northwest Natural was kind enough to move the space reservation from the 5th to the 3rd. I think they kind of went above and beyond in doing that, so we should be very appreciative of them. And so the new date is going to be December 3rd. And I think y'all is what's the time in that?
11, but the room is booked like 2.
Okay.
The lunch doesn't start until.
Lunch will start at
They start lunch going to 30.
right, it'll be, the place will be at 11:30, 1.
Okay. Program starts at noon.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks, everybody. That's, I'm sorry about having to blow through that. It's really exciting that we're able to continue this. It was something that Emily started, and I think it's really neat that we're able to honor her. And I can tell you that Jeff Gottfried was really excited about it, and is really appreciative that we're honoring Emily in that way. So, and she deserves it. So, the communications, we're moving on to committee, task force, and liaison updates. The communications committee, which is now chaired by Sunji Young. Congratulations, Sunji. We put this on the agenda under communications, but I didn't give Sunji much of a heads up on it. So. We were invited. I'll just take
Welcome
it.
to being
Well, we actually already talked about this, so it's not. We were invited to co-sponsor the UNA Human Rights Day event, the United Nations Association Human Rights Day event, which is on Human Rights Day. It's something that we've actually done before, and it's a really good opportunity for us to put a table up and get out in the community. They put on a really cool event on Human Rights Day, and I spoke to Gwen Bernard, who extended the invitation to us. She's with the UNA. She told us there is no financial contribution required to co-sponsor. She just would ask that we get our, put it out on our mailing list and be there to table and maybe even say a few words, one of us. So I think I should probably move to co-sponsor the event unless.
Well, there's no financial, do you need to?
Well, somebody who knows Robert's Rules of Order should tell me.
Well, I mean, it's an endorsement by the commission.
Okay.
So does anybody have anything to say about that? Any strong feelings one way or the other?
I strongly agree we should.
I think we should go for it. It's a great organization. And we did it, yes, we did it before, we really good to have a table there, so.
What time is it at?
I don't have the details, but it'll be on December 10th, I believe, Human Rights Day.
Well, you sure it's on the 10th? Because I think before it was on the Saturday before, wasn't it? Or was that just the?
Well, that's when Human Rights Day is. I didn't know, I thought they had it on.
I believe it's on the 10th. I'll send
I don't
out
think it
a
matters,
confirmation, but either way,
Anyway.
we can endorse, we can co-sponsor with them, right? Okay, so I would move that we co-sponsor the Human Rights Day event with the United Nations Association.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? With a show of hands and aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Deal. Okay, motion carries. Thanks.
Do we talk about set it right now, the limitation about who, the table who's going to do, and stuff like that, or just another time?
If we could wait for another time, that would probably be better.
We're gonna have a special meeting.
Yeah, we can do it at the special meeting. Levon, would you come up and join us? We've been invited by the Portland Commission on Disability to participate in their event. And so maybe if Levon could tell us about that.
We have been doing networking events once a quarter, and our last one was not an actual networking event. We did an ADA celebration. In November, our actual scheduled time is October, but we thought with all of the disability employment awareness activities in October, we would skip it.
in October and move it to November and have a networking event that was kind of casual and around the holidays, based on the concept of, kind of a holiday, come out and meet and greet and get to know each other. And we've already gotten the New Portlanders program to partner with us. And the Office of Equity and Human Rights would like to partner with us if HRC is interested in partnering with us also. And so it would be the group of us coming together, choosing a date, finding a location that works for everybody, and then just putting together a small program which is pretty informal in our networking events. So we would like to invite you to be a partner and invite your community partners, and we'll invite our community partners, New Portlanders will, and we will also be inviting people like the city council members and bureau people and stuff like that.
Do you have a venue already, or?
No, we don't, but as soon as, basically I just got the notice, OEHR is on with this if HRC is willing to be on with it.
We're shutting it down because we're not
We'll
doing
do it if they do it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't do
Yeah,
it, you shut,
we are
no,
there.
you don't shut it down, you just make it so it's just a PCOD thing, Portland Commission on Disability, and everything, which, I mean, we can do, we've done plenty of them, but I would really love to have something where we all come together and join in the whole equity concept. And it's a way, what we found is it's a way to do outreach that doesn't give the pressure of having to bring in speakers and having to talk about things, but people naturally start talking about the things when you bring them all in a room and have a little get-together. We've done it at the Red Star in the past, but we're looking at other venues, and I'm thinking maybe PSU.
And not to be a wet blanket, you just wouldn't be able to discuss committee or commission business.
Yeah. We make it, it's more about a party and
Oh, I know.
having fun.
Well,
I
thank
believe
you
you've
so much
joined
for the
us.
invitation. I, for one, think it's a fantastic idea. I think you would want somebody to be able to come to a planning meeting, at least one
Yes.
planning meeting, right?
At least one planning meeting.
I'll be involved in
and-
that as well.
Okay.
And probably some email exchange.
Sunji, you be
Yeah.
willing to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be great. Why don't we, do we need a
I move that
motion?
we co-sponsor the event with the
Amy seconds. Any further discussion about that?
I think a venue outside the central city would be good too, like Urco maybe.
The problem
So-
with that is it's hugely inaccessible.
So we can certainly work. with those.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of Lloyd's motion, show of hands and aye? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, Levon, we appreciate being included.
And I'll collect Sanji's contact info.
All right, and thanks, Sanji. And the last thing on this list is the city council hearing. There's a hearing tomorrow regarding the rest stop agreement between Right to Dream 2 and city council through Amanda Fritz. And Alan sent out an email about this, and so do you want to quickly talk about
Well,
whether we're going to participate? I don't really know.
well, I think the ask of the commission is whether it would be one, similar to the past, where I think what we're gonna ask is of the commission to support sending either a letter, or if there's a speaker available, to provide public testimony tomorrow in support of relocating R2D2 to that spot in the Pearl District. So it's that simple of providing some kind of support, either through oral testimony or writing a letter that basically says we support this based on human rights issues, not necessarily the land use issue that it is now. So that would be that. And then we'll figure out from there if there's somebody available to go. Amy is considering whether or not she can provide
I'm
public testimony.
working on my schedule for that, but are you available?
What time is it?
Well,
It's public testimony, so
hearing
we know how it
starts
goes.
at 2, yeah.
It starts at 2?
Well, Well, it starts at 2, and right now it's scheduled from 2 to 5 and from 6 to 8. So it gives you a sense for, it might be a long public testimony.
Yeah. So first of all, is there anybody that would be available? I think, because if we don't have anybody available, then we move to the letter. Oh, then we move to the letter, right?
Well, but I hear that HRTF is asking for authority to work that out. Is that true?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think the ask is, do we support, will the agency vote to support that,
Support the move.
yeah, support the move? And then the mechanics of how we support that support, I think, would really matter.
So
Well, I
it's-
move that we support the move.
So,
Wait, I'm confused. Do we have this discussion on it?
I'm also confused, but I do second that the title.
so Malloy moves to allow HRTF to advocate.
My motion is that the HRC support the move of Right to Dream to the Pearl District.
That we make a public statement of some form that supports the move of R2D2 to the spot in Pearl.
Okay, so Malloy moves to allow HRTF to make a public statement in support of.
Well, I think we gotta be clear, because if we send a letter, Kyle, I'm actually asking you sign it.
Okay, so moves for the HRC.
Sorry, who's making a motion?
Oh, I was trying to write it down for you.
Unless they can, well, you want HRTF to sign it.
So Malloy moves the
I think it's
HRC
better if it comes from the HRC.
to make a public statement in support of the Right to Dream Two's move
To the Pearl District.
to the Pearl.
So it also authorizes this, if we give public testimony for that person to say that they are representing the HRC, not the HRT. So that's what the motion is.
In, through public testimony and/or written communication.
We have a second?
I-
Before we
we've
go,
had
any
discussion.
comments?
Nothing.
Dale, you had that, you were saying about discussion.
Yeah, is there gonna be, I thought that would happen
Now we have
before
a
the
motion.
No.
Motion first,
Oh, then you discuss. and then you
Motion
vote.
second,
discussion.
and then we have a
So you
second.
wouldn't know what you're discussing on.
Did I second it? or
Ashley
no?
seconded.
Ashley
Okay.
seconded, okay.
I
Now
want
we
to.
have,
Okay.
we have discussion.
Like, has everybody seen what that location is? I mean, I know that Man and Fritz is in it and R2D2 is in it, so I'm like at heart in support because I see these two groups. But me personally, it still is under a bridge technically. And I know that if I'm fighting for human rights, I would want everybody to still have access to shelter, to food if necessary, to hygiene, and this isn't operating at that. It's just moving them out of public eye. And if that's the case, I would rather the public eye see them so that they have some compassion about it. So I wouldn't be able to have consensus on it. I don't oppose it, but I wouldn't necessarily be for it because I think that there's a better solution.
Well, what's the status quo? I mean, what's going on right now?
Yeah, I guess what I would say about it, part of the issue is that the current R2D2 rest area is being fined, and their fines amount to, well, I think it's a number that's $20,000 right now. So then, and R2D2 sued the city, so this is a settlement. This is the result of a settlement to remove the fines and R2D2 to drop their lawsuit if they're allowed to move to this spot. So that's one of the things I should
Who's
explain.
being fined?
Oh, R2D2 is currently being fined.
The landowner.
Yeah, the land, the property owner that they're on. And so that's, I think what I support is the solution, this compromise that's been reached between Commissioner Fritz and R2D2 and the property owner and BDS, which is the Bureau of Development Services, to allow them to move the fines that we dropped, the lawsuit we dropped, and they actually will only be, under this agreement, only be allowed to stay there for a year at this point. So again, yeah, it's not a permanent solution. And I think one of the points that I make, some of the writing I've done about it is, nobody's saying that we shouldn't have permanent solutions. We all agree that we need permanent solutions, but this is a solution that has been working for 50 to 100 people a night that otherwise would be sleeping on the street or in doorways or other places that are right now in a safe rest area, that has not had police involvement and other negative activity around it. At least that's what we're reading in the press.
And it's a solution that's been worked on with the city, with members of the
city, that comes from this organization themselves. So I'm sure that they would probably say this is not ideal, but I'm interested in our supporting that because it's something that they've been working so hard towards, and it's what they're requesting basically right now.
But what is the community requesting? What are the actual homeless people saying?
That's what I'm referring to. That R2D2 group that's representing that group of homeless people, that they've been actually working closely.
Well, I went to a thing last night at PSU about homelessness. Amanda Fritz was there, the mayor was there. This didn't come up at all, but they did get testimony from individuals. Some people were business owners who said, I don't want any homeless people sitting on my property. And then there was homeless people who gave testimony talking about human rights issues, and talking about the fact that they still need, that they're dying out there and that they need help, that they're hanging on by their fingernails. And so,
Disability
right,
event,
it
yeah.
was a disability event. And if we're just agreeing to move people without listening to what are the real people saying, we're just agreeing to them just going under a bridge, really, instead of attacking the root issue of wage slavery that causes people to be in a situation in the first place. And so, I don't know, like, what are we really lending our HRC power to? Is it just that, or is it something that we're using our power for something much more?
I think it's like I agree with you. The situation is actually heartbreaking. I don't mean to overuse that, but it really is. I think that right now we're faced with the opportunity to make a decision for a short term. It's not really even a solution, but it's a better scenario than what's currently presented as an option. So it's like the lesser of the two, if you will. So in that vein, I support it, but I don't think doing that excludes us or prevents us from doing something more proactive and addressing the root causes, which is what we should all be doing all the time.
And that could be mentioned in the letter or statement as well.
I just feel like the fight isn't.
I think your point is well taken.
Yeah.
It's not the best solution, but it's a workable solution that R2D2 itself is wanting.
It's a solution for this particular issue, not for the issue of homelessness.
But your point is well taken. It really is. So I think if we can vote, we probably should. So all in favor of Lloyd's motion? I don't think I need to repeat it. Everybody's probably got it, right? A show of hands and an aye? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Yellow. Oh, and Abdul, sorry, Abdul. Okay, so I want to be respectful of the time of people who work in this building. We're 15 minutes over. I would be the representative from the HTTF, so I'm going to yield my time and update everybody after this great event that we've got going on Sunday, where we'll be providing legal services, helping to provide legal services to victims of trafficking.
We did outreach for them during the CPRC event.
Oh, that's great.
Color. So we handed out the flyer.
Thank you very much. Does the Housing Rights Task Force?
I haven't seen that flyer, so if I can see that flyer, I can get it out.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Can this be emailed to us?
Similarly,
Emailed to us?
It's on the website, it's on the HRC
That's
website
right,
and
that's
Facebook.
right.
It's on Facebook.
But I can get it.
Yeah, that's why you just see it.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
similarly, I would yield to HRTF time.
Okay.
We don't have anything pressing to report other than what Andy discussed earlier.
Okay.
So we'll continue that conversation.
Great. And CPRC, do we have a CPRC rep here, Alan?
Actually, it's not the meeting last month.
It was a great meeting.
Yeah,
It
we'll
was
Jewish holidays in September.
Yeah, it was a great meeting with the Cully Latino community. We had an interpreter there, got a lot of great discussion between the police. They have some action at the commander or the lieutenant for that area. Collected phone numbers, and he's going to start working with neighbors there, getting out more. They requested more presence. So it was a very good meeting. If anyone would like the minutes from that meeting, I can certainly send them.
Would you send those to me? I'd like to see them. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Actually, they're online, aren't they?
Yeah, they are actually.
I'll just get them.
When they're approved next meeting, though. I'll send it to you before.
That would be great. Thank you very much. All right, everybody, thank you so much for all the hard work tonight. That was a
22nd.
lot of
Thank you, Kyle.
discussion. What's that?
22nd is good.
Oh, great. So,
22nd.
the 22nd for our special meeting, are we able to use this space?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's what you mean. So, is that okay with everybody? Yeah, okay, great. So we'll do that here on the 22nd. Thanks, everybody.